as I tuned in, I need to get a couple of things taken care of because I had some technical difficulties, but you know what, it's technology. However, I am Dr. Dyer, who's going to be number one, just like all this. We're going to be talking about the color of music, and ladies and gentlemen, this is part one. So without more, Dr. Dyer on the screen, and we're going to go to broadcast on second. Now let me just give you a little input about Dr. Dyer, who Dr. Dyer is, and what he has done. Dr. Paul W. Dyer has been teaching and training using individuals in human performance on mental, emotional, physical advancement. Dr. Dyer has worked with top-tier business professionals to Olympic athletes to increase their potential. Dr. Dyer helps professional people understand the science and energy of life. Dr. Paul W. Dyer has chaired many committees to help individuals rise above different situations and circumstances of homelessness, prison reform, and domestic violence. That's written Paul Dyer. Hey Paul, how are you, man?
How you doing, Tracy? Your music's on.
I didn't hear what you said.
There, because the music's on.
It's off now.
Yeah.
I thought you wanted to jam a little bit.
I was jamming, but I tell you, I don't think people heard you introduce me.
Well, then I'll do it again.
I because we were jamming. Who was that? Was that Curtis Mayfield?
No, actually, it's a gentleman. The gentleman, his name is Kali. He's from DC. He's actually my producer, Herb White, with Unique Sound Productions in DC, created the soundtrack, as well as Kali did the music. He's the vocalist.
Okay.
So let me turn back the hands of time and let me get you back here as to who you are. Okay. Sorry about that. I was jamming. Sometimes I get a little too excited. I got to wazoo sometimes. So anyway, let's get to who Paul. Let's get to who Paul is. So Dr. Paul W. Dyer has been teaching and training individuals in human performance on mental, emotional, and physical advancement. Dr. Dyer has worked with top-tier business professionals to Olympic athletes to increase their potentials. Dr. Dyer helps professional people understand the science and the energy of life. Dr. Paul W. Dyer has chaired many committees to help communities. Individuals rise above different situations and circumstances, from homelessness, prison reform, and domestic violence. Here is Dr. Paul W. Dyer. Did I do that right? Did I get an A? A for effort?
A B plus, because you are the B queen. There you go.
Thank you so much. Well, we have so much to talk about here. Let's dive into the color of music. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about the color of music for multiple reasons, because the color of music, how we know it, it has transformed the lives, the minds, and the heart of people, of the melanated people within our communities. And we'll go into deep discussions as to why. And again, this is part one of this discussion. So let's first talk about, Paul, how music and videos have degraded women. Let's talk about degrading women, how music has degraded women.
Wow, you do want to get right into it. I mean, when it talks about music and degrading women. So first of all, what Miss Tracy didn't, I'll allude to this. I'm a neuroscience person. I study the science of the brain, the chemistry of the brain, how it affects the body on a cellular epidemiology level. That is my studies. Is one of my doctorates in studies is neuroscience. So okay, I want people to understand that's where I'm coming from, to understand the circle, right? Mm-hmm. Of how we are affected and how it affects the body, right? And how mm-hmm. it affects the brain. So when Tracy asked about denigrating women, it comes from an epidemiology historical level of why melanated people treat women the way they do, and not understanding the why, right? We talk about how come. Like Tracy asked, how come?
Mm-hmm.
Well, ask yourself, do I? And if we can ask ourselves, do I, without false assumptions, you probably do by the words you say.
Mm-hmm.
You probably do, and I'm not talking purposely. We're not talking about evilness. We're not talking about there's a lot of sickness that we have between traumatic situations, between historical traumatic situations. We're talking about subconscious behavior of denigrating women. And I think sometimes when it comes to melanated people, when it comes to black men, we're like, well, how do I subjecticate women? Like, what do I do that's against them? Ask yourself, what do you do that's for them?
Right.
And I'm not talking being supportive. I'm talking about the words you use. Like, hey, get me. Look at the phrase, hey, get me, ... I don't care if it's a glass of water. Hey, get me. That is denigrating a woman that you're asking who is in your household. You're like, Dr. Paul, why is that? Hey, get me is a command.
Hey is the first thing is the flag. Hey.
Right. Or what if it's not hey? What if it's you? What if it's Tracy? Get me. Get me is a command. It's not an ask. Ask yourself, the words you use, are they commanding or are they asking? And more often, people use command languages as so familiar to the people that it gets blown off as in, they know what I mean. Tracy knows I love her. She's my girl. That's my wife. That's my girlfriend. That's my daughter. They know I love them. This is why I say it. It's because we're so familiar. The words vibrate at a different frequency. Hey, get me, being the command, vibrates at a different frequency that's so low that has no loving tones. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what you and I believe we are to each other. Hey, get me, Tracy, get me, go get this, are commands. Commands are not love languages.
Not at all.
So people have to be very intentional when it comes to being happy and happiness to the words they're using and who they're using it to and the reason why they're using those specific words. And if you're going to say to yourself, as you're listening to this, as you're replaying this, oh, they know what I mean, you're missing my significant point is you're hurting the cellular self of a person. You're hurting the cellular development of yourself. You're destroying a person you're around because you're using words that are low frequency, which causes disturbance and sickness.
Now let's talk about, now you're talking about using words. Now let's talk about, we're talking to somebody. Let's talk about it in the music.
Wow. Right. And okay. You know, we knew, first of all, let's be transparent. Tracy and I knew we were going to talk about vibrations, media, music, and words and sounds and how it affects us. There's a sickness in music that has less to do with words and more to do with sounds.
Right.
But words create sounds. Mm-hmm. I just talked about the intentional of a word. The word also creates a sound. Sound creates wave. Wave creates vibrations. Vibration affects the body. If I want people to understand that it's not just, even if I took away the words, there are certain tones that are what you call low-level frequency tones that only trigger certain parts of the brain, which affect certain parts of people. If you're in traumatic sickness and you're only in survival mode, which most melanated people are, they really are. They're living day to day. And it has nothing to do with just the color or the economic levels of people. If anyone's living day to day, paycheck to paycheck, which roughly a lot of millions of people are in the United States and globally, they're listening to so many things that are affecting them. The music, if it keeps in low tones, not tones, but vibrational frequency, low vibrational frequency, keeps you in a sad frequency rate. The sad frequency rate keeps you in an animalistic state, which means that you can never experience joy.
So let's talk about then. You're talking about this low frequency state. Now let's talk about the beginning of when that happens. Now you can, like, for instance, and we had talked about this prior to this conversation, how
right.
And I'll be the example to talk about what happened to me, and I'll use one of the examples was when I was, when I used to go out and hang out, and there was this song that came on. I'm not going to say the words of the song because you'll know who the artist is. And we're going to do that just to not. But anyway, so the song came on, and I was all hyped and with it to go dance, with this song. Then when the words came out from the song, the lyrics were displayed, were saying, I exited stage left. I'm like, whoa, this is not the song that I want to be dancing on. The person that I was dancing to felt some type of way, but I knew that instantaneously. So, however, I say that to say, when a person feels that way when listening to a song, that's when they should either turn it off or acknowledge that this song that they're listening to is causing some type of effect in their life, but people still listen to it, though.
I actually think a lot less people acknowledge their understanding of what they're really listening to. Most people say they'll listen to the words, but they're not really listening to the tones and what it's creating. You can create joy or you can create sadness just by tones. This is why we have vibrational healings. This is why we have different parts of our body that are affected by frequencies and tones. This is why there's different ways of healing your body just by bells and singing. This is why all these has a cause and an effect on your body, whether you know it or not. I'm letting you know, and I hope people know that in this day and age, that tones, music has an effect on your body. Okay, so now that you know that and you can agree with that, if you disagree with that, I would like to have that conversation with you. As you agree with that, what does it matter, Dr. Paul, if the words are positive and the music is a low frequency tone vibration? Mm-hmm. Is there contradictory? Yes, there is. The reason.
So let's talk about. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Paul. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
The reason why it's a contradiction because I could be talking about how much I love someone, but if we're talking about scales and musical notes and wavelengths and wave vibration, if I keep it in what you call a low frequency tonation, it still keeps your cell vibrating at a lower level, which never brings you out of survival state.
Wow. So we're talking about the low level. What about the medium level? What does the medium level do?
Well, so going back to intentional words, media use words to direct you and control you. Mm-hmm. Media uses words to direct you and control you. I'm not talking about the inflammatory words. Those are easy to pick out. Yeah. The them, they, and whoever. I'm talking about words that are used as they put together the sentence structures are used to either control you or direct you. And that gets you to either buy something, do something, or cause something. Understand why and I always tell people, do you understand why you are feeling and doing whatever it is you're doing? And if you use answers in words like, this is what I'm used to, then who's controlling you? This is what I normally do, then who's controlling you? This is what I was brought up on, then who's controlling you? This is what my people do, then who's controlling you? This is what my environment does. The thought process, a consciousness of thought, turns into frequency and hertz and waveform. I was just writing about this, about your thoughts create frequency. Your frequency affects your body. Your body produces a chemistry of the brain. Your brain produces an internal action which causes you to do external things.
Now let's talk about how let's talk about, there's slow music.
Yeah.
There's music that healed. Like back in the day when music was coming out, there was a lot of healing, there was a lot of love, there was a lot of togetherness.
And there was a message. There was a positive message, right? There was a positive message, right?
So let's talk about that now versus the music of today, where there's a lot of division, there's a lot of crime, there's a lot of disrespect, there's a lot of all of those things right now that's going on in the community. It has everything and everybody in like a free fall. Not a free fall, but everybody just in a panic mode right now. People, it's crazy right now.
Well, I'm curious when people think about the music that has been more popularized than other. And I will take Christian music or gospel music or soulful music or any music that was saying something. Before, when I was asking, was that Curtis Mayfield? Music, let's go with, what was music? Music in our in the African nations and other nations were tones and signals to call for joyous occasions, wedding occasions. It was the way you speak to other people. It was through the beat. This is something that's been talked about for a millennia, right? That's easy. You can look that up. Why drums and all this other stuff. This is great stuff, right? So how do we turn that stuff into? How do we turn the music that people are being driven to come to turn it into a negative spin?
Right.
And who's producing it? Remember, all that bad rap music that's being produced was produced by white people. Because they knew it was driving black people to be violent. Right? They didn't try to really take rap music off the air as much as they tried to take rock music off the air. Because rock music was the one that was entering the legislative music because the kids were committing suicide. They tried to stop that music. They didn't try to stop rap music. They knew that, what was the Ice-T thing when he was talking about cop killer? It wasn't because of his music. It was because of what he was saying. Let's get this. So who is allowing music to filter through and who's promoting it should let you know how good and bad it is.
True
because that. So if we're not going to allow rock music because Ozzy Osbourne is batting bats heads off because of the music he's playing, we don't want them to hear that. But we don't mind them hearing the rap music because my white child isn't buying it. So I could care less. But if you're going to talk about cop killing, well, my husband's, most of white America's cops, we're not going to have that. But the other music that people were talking about, they didn't really have that much of an issue with. We'll let that because it's not affecting certain communities. It's only affecting those communities. And those communities that are marginalized, we don't mind them turning inside out emotionally, physically, and spiritually. We don't mind them being degrading themselves because we look at them as animals anyway.
Right. So how do you think that we can help these young folks, or not even young folks anymore, there's older folks too, understand that what they're listening to is causing them to do numerous things, not take care of their children, not take care of themselves, degrade women, disrespect their parents, disrespect leaders, disrespect their elders? How do we get them to understand those things?
I think, Tracy, that's why we're doing this show. I really think we're doing this show not to incite people as an argument, but to not to convince, but to convey. I think there's a difference. I'm not trying to convince you that what you have been doing, what you thought was right, is wrong. I'm just trying to convey the information of how it's affecting you. It is up to you to make the choice now. It is affecting you. Let's go with that. it is affecting you. If you think it isn't affecting you, my question is why you're listening to it.
Right. So I guess what we need to find out now, how do they acknowledge that it's affecting them? And I know that that's kind of hard because people will act like it's not affecting them. Like my two examples I gave you, when I actually now, and I'll say the second example now, since you guys can get, I'll be the example as we are having this conversation as to how I was able to acknowledge the music was making a change in me.
Right.
Now, I was driving from one state to another with my music on, and I went from driving the speed limit, listening to regular R&B music, got some hip hop that came on my mixtape. This was back in the day. Mixtape came on. I went from driving the speed limit to speeding. And I'm like, whoa. Let me back it up. Let me put back on my R&B that had me in chill mode, the happy moment. So, I mean, for real, that's exactly what happened. So I acknowledge that.
Right.
Didn't get the ticket, but I mean, that's something, and that was back in the 80s when I acknowledged that music can change the mentality.
So here's a question, Tracy. The question is really for you, but it's really for our listening audience. Was it the speeding that helped you acknowledge it, or was it the music that helped you recognize the speeding? Which one was first?
It was the speeding.
Okay, so it was an action, right? Now, the juggernaut thing that we have for people in emotional science is, what if they never recognize the action as a negative?
Well, you know what, Dr. Dyer, I will say this. I think that's what's happening right now. People are not recognizing the action, or they're not holding themselves accountable for the action that was taken after they listened to something that was causing them to do what they do.
Well, what if we really give people the leeway? And I know some people say some people are just innate and some people are born this way, but I'm going to give people the leeway saying they're not recognizing the negative effect. And I'm going to have to say they're not recognizing the effect, positive or negative. They're not recognizing it. They're just thinking it's just what it is. And that's the wrong answer. Because it doesn't matter, because we're not even going to have to say, you don't even have to tell me the hip-hop artist that you're listening to, but if it was a hip-hop artist that made you feel strong about yourself, positive about the situation we are living in as melanated people, we're going to feel a positive way about ourselves, which causes us to feel stronger about ourselves, which creates us a muscle flexation, which causes you to step on that gas. It had very little to do with, it made you, like, I can listen to, we're not promoting. Here's the thing, and I think this is a disclaimer. We're not going to promote music or the types of music or artists. That's not what we're talking about. But if I'm listening to a certain music that makes me feel strong about who I am as a man, as a black person in America, as a melanated person in the world, I'm going to feel some type of physiological way. That's going to cause me to walk and step a different way. Do I understand why I am in a negative state prior to listening to the positive state? That's the recognition. Like, why was I so down until? Why do I feel this way now and not before? Because that's where the healing process can take place, and that's where the negative action always is. Because I don't understand where I was, but all of a sudden I understand where I am right now because I feel a certain way. But I don't know how I got there. That's why so many people can be manipulated through music.
And you know what, Paul, it's amazing that you're talking about this, because I want to segue. We're not going to talk about, we have so many things to talk about. Like I said, this is part one, and we're going to go over, and within the next couple of days or weeks, we're going to be digging into deeper, and I'll tell you what we're going to be digging into. And well, maybe I won't tell you.
That's right.
Let's talk about, I also talk about music in video games. Does the same thing.
Well, so Okay, so now I'm going to get into my neuroscience. But most of the times that people heard about these things, of positive, negative. So all things are made of matter, whether you know it or not. Things are, right? And then there's an atom, and then there's a nucleus, and there's electrons and protons. Okay, so protons are positive, and electrons is a negative. I'm giving you a little. I'm going to try to keep the science small so you understand. But there's what you call a pleasure center that goes through the circle of Willis, a part of the brain, right? So in the center part of the brain where we'll have to use a diagram in another time, maybe our next show in part 2. Mm-hmm. But as the hippocampus is triggered with the auditory nervous system, which affects the whole body, there's things that stamp it. It stamps it saying, this is important, by either an effect, a cause and effect, or a moment of something traumatic, whether it be good or positive. Whether it be bad, good or negative. It doesn't matter. It just stamps it. That moment triggers a chemical response, which wants us to create that response again. That's where addiction comes in. Mm-hmm. So that pleasure center got triggered. Pleasure centers gets triggered for positive and good. But as long as it gets triggered, we want that feeling again because of the different endorphins that gets released through our body. We like that feeling. So we look for it in certain things. A lot of the times it happens and it can create a negative state to organs, but a positive state to a memory.
I'm glad you touched on that too. You know, that's the whole purpose behind positive vibes and how positive vibes came into creation, because people don't know that there's music that you can listen to that allows you to regenerate cells, or cells to heal, cells to regenerate when you listen to positive music. Allows for healing. And I'm not talking about just, I'm not just talking about one genre of music. I'm talking about positive music across the board.
Right. Most people think, oh, you're just talking about this or that or this type of building music no. Positive vibe is vibration. It's signals. It's wavelength. When cells are okay, so why does low frequency music causes sickness? On the cellular side, when the cell is vibrating at a low frequency, it has the opportunity to absorb a sickness, i.e. cancer, or weakens the body, because cells affect the muscles, it affects the blood, so on, oxygen, so on and so on. So when you're vibrating at a lower frequency and listening to lower frequency music, and you're saying, and now hopefully someone's asking the question, what's lower frequency music? First, let's go with the easy one. Is the words vibrating at a high frequency? Are they positive words? Should all music be positive? You can tell a story and still be positive. It could be a sad story and still be positive. But when you are taking people out of their name, you're undermining a certain character or race of people by using colloquial terms. If you're not understanding what I mean, saying nigga is not good. I don't care how happiness you use it. It's not a good term, right? It's a slave term. So let's go with that. And if you want to be associated with your captives, okay.
And something came to my mind, and I'm not saying this to be funny now. I want to say this, and you can tell me. And then sometimes there's a humor side of me, but so like the song saying, "Don't worry, be happy." That song, "Don't worry, be happy." That's a good song. People are like, "Well, yeah, I'm not going to be happy." Now, if we change that to "Don't worry, be the N-word, don't worry, be an N-word," you know what I'm saying? Then people are going to be like, what do you mean? Then it changes the whole feeling of the word, the whole feeling of the song. Yeah. So I totally get it. Well, look, we're at our half an hour point, so we don't want to dig too deep into that, but we're going to get into some other things on the next shows, and we're not going to say that now. Do you think we should say it now, or should we just keep it in there?
No, we got to come back, because I think people need to come in. I think whoever hears it, when they hear it, when they see it, they need to ask the question. And the question is I'm not understanding it, or what do you mean? Because there's things I said that they may not know what I mean, so ask the question. If you're not ready to ask the question, then you're ready to stay in the sickness you're in.
That's true. So we're going to be talking about, we're going to be talking about the video in the music and degrading women. We're going to be talking about also reality shows and how they are degrading and how they are degrading the men, women, relationships, the love of family, the love of community. We're going to be talking about crime and how crime and music interacts with each other. This causes divinity. We're going to be talking about our melanated men and how they are at odds with each other because of the frequencies that they listen to. They're around. We're talking not just music. We're talking about even the people that they're around, even the voices that they use.
The words that they're using, the voices they use, the words they're using, it creates the environment. We're going to talk about all that. Tracy, I just want to say I love positive vibes. I want to say thank you for being a guest on your show. I just think you're doing so amazing things for women, melanated women, women of color, but women in general, about saying that we can be what we ought to be, but what we strive to be, I am. And I love that. I've always admired you and the things you do. I don't think people who listen to your show, who know your show, know enough about you and all the things you do and have done.
Right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget you can always follow Dr. Paul W. Dyer on YouTube, iHeart, Apple, Spreaker, and a lot much more. And he's on Facebook as well. So make sure you tune into his shows. Highly intelligent, has a lot of energy, has a lot of knowledge regarding the neurons and just helping homelessness and people, communities, and all those great things. So if you're looking for some good news, not just good news, but also news that's going to help heal you, heal your families, and also you as fathers, mothers, brothers, nephews, take some time out and listen to this positive brother as to how he's doing some amazing things in the community and uplifting our people to live long lives in a positive mode.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you. God bless you.
God bless.
All right, bye-bye.